carved from the wing bone of a red-crowned crane. And the idea came from a National Geographic article, I think. But the note is, playable tonal flutes dated around 7000 BCE have been unearthed at Gogh, the site of a Neolithic Yellow River settlement based in the central plains of ancient China. The flutes were made from red-crowned crane wing bones. So the idea here is that the intrigue was that, in concordance with Hinge theory, nothing is isolated. Everything is part and participates in a greater whole. One might want to think of a great cosmic smooch if you want to. But this is what it is. So where's that bone on the wing of the bird participating in what is now a flute? And of course, the wing enables flight, and notes, musical notes, fly through the air and vibrate. So it all becomes this beautiful kind of spiraling plasma. So let me read it, and I think you'll get the idea as we go along. Flute carved from the wing bone of a red-crowned crane. Wing born too of flight. So the flute is born from the wing. Inheriting wing, loft bone, swirling through swathes of cumulus gum, shedding terrestrial surface marrow pilings. So it's shedding the materialistic and moving into the realm of music and art and soaring. So we're getting rid of that kind of, as Mary said, quotidian. Swirling through swathes of cumulus gong, shedding terrestrial surface marrow pilings, sledding through mnemonic collections, a whir construction. Seance to lift, to robe the tribe aloft. The flute is a wind instrument, traveling with, migrating. Alatunji, these are the great musicians of the instruments. Alatunji, the African drum migrates. Sabicas, the Spanish guitar migrates. Casals, the Italian cello migrates. Dolphy's flute and left alone migrates. Wind is breath, is chicory and due diligence, is soft and surreptition, circulation and suspense, is everywhere, and absences apologia. Flute, built to fly like the crane, the flock migrating south, hear it, scaling kinship glissades, hurling from rotational telekinetic watchtowers. So the flock is flying over and someone's playing the flute, and there's a kinship between the flute noise and the flock is sensing that kinship with what's coming from a man playing a flute, which comes from the bone of one of their own, in that sense. But now everything's coming together in this kind of dramatic participation. I'm not finished. Okay. So, flute, it's fun describing this stuff. I never do normally. Flute, built to fly like the crane, the flock migrating south, hear it, scaling kinship glissades, hurling from rotational telekinetic watchtowers. Here, they hear rumbling, lurch-routed wail plaints from the fallen, the left behind. That's the bone of the dead bird, the bird that is not dead, but is no longer what it was. It's now spirited into this vast migration, So here, rumbling, lurch-routed wail plaints, that's a W-A-I-L, wail plaints from the fallen, the left behind. Here, the benumbing rush, the altitudinous sagacity spike. Sagacity is like wisdom spike. The benumbing rush to altitudinous sagacity spike. A last-ditch heave, disking coloratura songster stars thick with anthem. Braiding, B-R-A-I-D-I-N-G, braiding tunfuls of scorch lament to restore umbilical breach. Yeah, so at the end,
Yeah.
it's more like thank you. Thank Mary. I do have to salute Mary, because if it weren't for Mary, there'd be no reading here tonight, because I was tremendously inert about the whole thing. So that gives you an idea of
But you were going to say at the end, and then you interrupted yourself.
oh, the umbilical breach.
Right, so that's...
Yeah, so, let me see what I said.
That's a big breach by the end.
140, thanks. So, yeah, so grading 2 for the score to restore. So this mutual swirling like a shell, and how things swirl, not isolated. What we live in today, with these ideologies clashing over the ridiculous, trivial nuances, threatening to. So it's restoring this umbilical breach, which where things are isolated. You go back and read a book like D.H. Lawrence's Apocalypse. He talks about the breach occurred really, in his view, with the Platonic. Mind-body dualisms in general. And you go back to the Sumerian 2500, you walk out, and they had without tools, they had connections to the stars and to the seasons, and like the indigenous peoples and things like that. So I'll actually address that next time. Now this is a kind of what a friend of mine calls user-friendly poem. I'll do. This is probably prose and memoir. This comes from my, it was in 3 weeks in France studying Van Gogh. And so this is, I just returned from immersing myself in the Van Gogh study. I'll explain some of this as we go through too. Returning to the States after my immersion in, I'll just say V, I use VG. Entering the elevators, walking the New York City streets, people looking down, immersed in their screens. De-evolving from becoming erect. I imagine Vincent beside me. How would he react? I am on 79th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenues. I count 11 out of the 12 people on the street looking down at their screens. I view them as passive cattle being led about by evil rulers from foreign galaxies. By Steve Jobs, 18. By Steve Jobs always went on vacation with no cell phone. It's a well-known fact. No, just thought it was a big joke, cell phone stuff. Steve Jobs, AT&T, Verizon, Microsoft, Google and Company. They exalt in gadgetry, securitized by gadgets, soothed by these comforting teething toys, clueless as to how they are the lifeless players in a vast prosperity plot. Vincent didn't look down, was not led about. Vincent looked outward, upward, toward the sun. I am on the 2nd Avenue bus going downtown, sitting at a window seat. Behind me, a teenage girl is on a cell phone, talking to her friend about how boring the Botanical Gardens is. Couldn't they find a movie to go to instead? Standing above me, a man blares loudly into his cell. I'm on the bus. I'll be home in about 10 minutes. To the rear of the bus, yammering in a heavy New York accent, a woman reschedules her doctor's appointment. The man sitting next to me phones someone. They talk baseball. How so-and-so is going to do this year. I only want to look out the window, enjoy the city, be peaceful, linger in scenery, but I'm bombarded by grating vocalisms. I have no phone urge. None at all. I wonder if there's a pill from proving one's lack of phone urge. Mr. Baseball is getting louder and more passionate. Something about the Dodgers not having a chance. That's it. That's my limit. I reach into my backpack, grab my phone, and call Vincent. 917-246-5501. Hey, Vincent, buddy. I'm purposely loud and hail fellow to mirror Bozo's discourtesy. He gets louder and talks at innings. I block him out and concentrate on my exchange with Vincent. Now this is important to know. So I was in Auvers-sur-Oise, where he died, Now, of course, you have to go to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam with a great collection. That's a whole other subtext, is how that came about with his. Vincent died, obviously, you all know, poor. He sold just a few pieces in his lifetime. And the irony is his nephew, also named Vincent, became the wealthiest man in the Netherlands in the 40s. And the reason we have the Van Gogh Museum is because he was able to, he didn't want to sell it and make a lot of money. He wasn't like a hotshot needing helicopters and all the fancy egos. And he wanted to keep the, anyway, so his kids couldn't pay the taxes, so they sold it to the Netherlands for a reasonable sum. That's how we're all able to profit from this wealth in one area. Okay, so I went to Auvers-sur-Oise, where he died. Now, so I went to the field where wheat field with crows. So I went to the field, and let you all know, it's really interesting because there's crows in the wheat field. The wheat field filled with crows. Yeah, still same crows. Okay, well, I'm going to read it. What, right? You were supposed to tell them what?
Why that matters.
Well, I'm going to tell them in here. The matter. I read why it matters. Boy, you really threw them for a loop with that crow picture, didn't you? What? You laughed too when you heard they thought it was death coming to get you. I chuckled because, of course, they were there. That's why he painted it. It wasn't a metaphor. I chuckled along with Vincent. Well, that's part of the fun, isn't it? I say, seeing what they're going to make out of our excruciations. Yeah, I know you were a crow, a black dot on the green lawn of semantic sizzling. I knew you were leaving Earth, sick of the earthlings and numbskullery, having to feed upon their garbage, their leftovers, and no-talent assessments, pushing you, a nurturer, to the margins. Who wouldn't want to take flight? Who wouldn't want to take flight? Be part of a colony you had always lusted for. Imaginative, winged creatures, fanning out, flaming, grabbing the sunlight away from humanity's greedy, unappreciative, undeserving soul dams, draining them of their arrogance. Vincent laughs, takes obvious pleasure in my complicity. Sure, I knew what you were doing, or they're thinking some obvious metaphor could stand in, could translate your profundity. Well, it's good for some chuckles when in practice you were pistoning to carcinogenic heat. In tribal dignity, we, the Crow Nation, an umbrella cancellation. So the vision here is he connects with all the crows from all around the world, and they gather together and they block out the sun from the earth. That's the retaliative factor, you see. Okay, so pistoning to carcinogenic heat. In tribal dignity, we, the Crow Nation, rise, an umbrella cancellation. Hosting backwards, uplifting in planetary retreat, flanking in the syrup of a voodoo nation. These flagging contagion wings, ripening in the retrolight of annihilative bloom. Vaccination opacity, I scream emotionally. I push the red button and close the phone. The bus has emptied considerably.